That's where most people land. They put money into these retirement accounts, and then they just hope it'll all be big enough when they're 60 or 65 years old. And so I started digging into the tax code and really understanding the space. And I realized that there were options for people to control, not just like a self-directed IRA, but really have control where they were absolutely running their ship. They were captaining it.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Chris Naugle, and welcome to the Money School podcast, where we talk about, you guessed it, money, failure, and what it takes to succeed. And that's what today's story is going to be. My guest today is a young entrepreneur. Not today, but he was a young entrepreneur starting his first business at 11 years old. From that time, he has operated successfully 70 different companies. But that's not the best part. The best part is, in building all these companies up, by the time he reached 30, he hit the wall. We all know that was the Great Recession, but during that, he lost tens of millions of dollars, was completely brought to his knees. It's a humbling experience. Many of you maybe went through the same thing, but you know what? It's not what you go through. It's not the failures you have in your life. It's what you do with them. And this man didn't just sit there and say, oh, boo-hoo me, I failed, I lost $70 million. Nope. He built it back up to over $200 million. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Damion, welcome to the show.
Chris, great to be here, man. I'm looking forward to this episode.
Absolutely, man. So I've been like deep diving on your website, looking at all the stuff. I mean, you've got tons of stuff on the website, from your EQRP to you got just so many companies. It's hard to even pick and choose which one. For your books, you got your podcast, but you also have another company we're going to get into called Frame Tech. But before we dive into EQRP, which is, I think, going to be a really interesting discussion, and Frame Tech, I want to go back to when you were 11 years old. You were clearly a video game kid because your first company was in that space. Can we start there and just talk about how did you start or even think to start a company at 11?
You know, it's interesting because with being an entrepreneur, the thing that happens is you see a problem, something bugs you, it annoys you. You say, I can solve that. And at 11, the problem was my parents told me we were broke, we had no money, and no, we can't go buy a video game. And I said, I don't like that answer. I'm gonna go solve the problem. So hired them to take me out to people's houses that were selling Nintendo games in the newspaper. I mean, these are all like Nintendos, those old things, those are gone. Newspapers are basically gone. But at the time, that was what I had. So I used the resources I had to go solve the problem, which was I wanted to play games. And then it turned into a business. So my parents were basically my first employees. And then I played the games and then I sold them. So I had a wholesale retail business. And it was really just because there was a problem and I wanted to solve it. It was out of sheer frustration.
Oh, I love that, because you know what? Every business owner does one thing, and I should say, hold on, let me reframe that question or that statement. Every successful business owner does one thing really well, and that is they solve a problem. The bigger the problem, the more money you make. So you had a problem, and hey, I know there was a lot of kids back in our era, but also in today's era, where they hear the same thing. You know, we can't get this, you can't have that. You just weren't willing to accept that. So you figured out a solution to a problem, and that happened to not just be your problem. It was a lot of other kids' problems, but that wasn't where it ended. You didn't just start this video game business and sail off into the sunset. Like that was 70 businesses prior. So what happened after that? I mean, you're 11, you're running a business. Your parents are your first employees, but what businesses were next, and how did you continue?
So I was doing a lot of just scrappy things, the door-to-door sales, all that kind of stuff throughout school. But when I deviated off the entrepreneurial path and went to college, because that's what you're supposed to do. Like society tells you to do these things. And when I went there, I went to school 4 times, and one of the schools I went to, I saw a problem. The problem is everybody was getting ripped off from the bookstore. And so I said, well, this is a big, juicy, fat place to go and harvest something. Basically try to do better than the bookstore when they, with used books. So I went in and competed with them out of my dorm room. And I was, basically grabbing books from people all over campus, running them across campus, getting money, moving the money back across. It was exhausting the last week of school when I was supposed to be doing finals. And that ultimately paid for school, but the president of the school didn't like it and said, look, you either have to shut down or we're going to kick you out. And I said, well, I'm not going to shut down because this is paying for school. And so I literally got thrown out of college because I put the bookstore out of business. And so I think that was the experience that said, okay, you're supposed to be doing something else, not the mainstream. You're not a robot. You're part of solving problems. And then that led to other stuff, real estate and insurance and retirement accounts and ultimately manufacturing plants. But it was honoring what was true. And what was true was that I was an entrepreneur at heart. Like I just liked solving problems. Like you said a second ago, that successful businesses solve a problem. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make when they go and start businesses. They think it's about making money and they forget that they should actually be going and solving a problem. So a lot of them fail and wonder why. It's because they weren't really solving a problem. They were doing something for themselves instead of serving other people.
Well, it always surprises me. I started my first company, not quite as entrepreneurial as you. I started at 16. You had me beat by that. But throughout that time, I mean, a lot of my friends started companies, and I will tell you, many of them started companies doing things that they actually didn't like to do, but they did it because it was money. They were able to make money. And, as they said, I don't have to work for the man. But when you're doing something you're not passionate about, something that's only serving one purpose, and that is to make you money, you will always fail every single time. And that's what happened to all of them. But then when you look at all the successful business owners out there, and you and I know a lot of them, all of them went down a path where they found something they were passionate about, usually because it was a problem in their own life that they wanted to solve. And then when they solved their problem, they're like, wait a second, this also is a problem lots of other people have. And then you basically build from that passion project into the next phase, which is usually the beta, where you're saying, all right, will this work with solving other people's? And then from there, you just push go and you go with it. But I think the interesting thing about problem solving is it really has nothing to do with you making money. The end result is always going to be you're going to make a lot of money, but the first primary goal is you need to serve. You need to serve others. You need to solve other people's problems. And I don't know how much you ever listen to Earl Nightingale, but I'm a massive fan, and I love how he talks about that worthy idea, that, you plant that idea in your mind. And then that idea, if you think about it every day and you use that idea every day, the only thing that can happen is success. But then he talks about how only roughly about 5% of the population actually have a worthy idea that they pursue. And that's sad. But that just tells you how many people out there in society just want security. They just want the 9 to 5. They just want to make just enough to supply and do what they need to do with their family. But they always have these big dreams, and they're always saying, oh, I wish I could do that. I should have done that. Or, it's always these excuses, but they could have done every single thing you did if they just planted the idea and then focused on solving the problem for those 95%. Because if only 5% of those people have the idea, that means that their business model, their demographic is the 95%, because all business owners solve a problem for the other 95%. And that's what you've done 70 times. But why so many? Like, let's talk a little bit about the magnitude of how many companies you've started.
Well, here's one of the things, and I love that you brought up Earl the OG. It's with The Strangest Secret that I've probably listened to 1,000 times, and all the stuff. I think that's one of the things, just a tidbit of morsel. People going back to the original source of the information. It's not necessarily the regurgitated information. It's what was the original source, and then gleaming the wisdom from that. Back in 25 years ago when I started all this stuff, really got into it. That's what I was burying myself with, was all that information. And the reason, and so like all the different courses and the seminars, and I went, the reason there's 70 companies was because I needed to learn all the things that didn't work. So when we talk about 70 successful companies, I successfully launched and ran. It doesn't mean that they were profitable. What it means is that a lot of them taught me a lot that I needed to get out of those things to get to here. So, and that's one of the things that people get screwed up with, where they say, well, I want to do something and make it and have a successful business. Successful doesn't mean you're going to make money. It may be the first of 5 or 10 that gets you to the place, but it's part of this process. And so I needed all those things, because each one of them taught me things. Some of them made money, some of them made millions, and some of them lost me millions. So there's this whole process, and where I'm at today with the scale and the size of everything, I wouldn't be sitting here with a $500 million valuation on my company because it was the first thing I started and I got lucky. Lucky is, when opportunity meets preparation. Well, preparation was 70 companies and all of the trauma, all the brain damage, going bald, all this stuff. It wasn't, I think you said something else that I think is really important. And you talked about passion, and people get passion screwed up with enjoyment. And just because you're passionate about a project doesn't mean it's going to be easy or fun every day. Passion is more of a missional thing where there's something that's deeply important. And I look at people and they go, yeah, I want to do something that I'm passionate about. And they're in their mind, they're thinking about something that they get up and they're like having a good time. And I can tell you that grinding through all these different companies, there was not this is really fun doing accounting or learning bookkeeping or going out there and flying on planes every other day for years. Like some of that stuff, I would have rather been doing something else. That's part of this process. So the process was the 70 companies. It wasn't, I think that's the reason that there's so many, because I had to learn all the things that I loved, wasn't good at, things that I did love. And that takes time and it takes a lot of energy. And most people, quite frankly, aren't committed enough to go through that process. That's the key. It's the commitment and the work.
Yeah, folks, I hope you really listened to that because there was a lot of golden nuggets in there. Number one, he said it so fast, and I'm going to have him repeat it, but luck. So many people think people get lucky. They think that luck is actually real. They go to the casino and they think, oh, I'm going to get lucky today. Luck doesn't exist, folks. Luck in its true capacity really is just this thing that follows opportunity. But if you don't go after opportunity, then luck never happens. So can you just say what you said again about luck? And I can tell we read a lot of the same things because a lot of the things you're saying, I'm like, yep, I remember that.
Yeah. So luck, you're exactly right. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And the preparation is not just the stuff that you go read, it's the process that you go through where you become the things. So the things that I say and the things that you say from the books and the seminars and the experiences, that's our life packed into things that are part of our cellular DNA. It's now just normal. So if I say something, yeah, somebody probably has said that. There's probably a book that you could quote it. And it becomes who you are when you live these things over a period of time. So I laugh because like the project that we're working on that we'll talk about, it was a napkin 2 years ago today. It was a napkin at a lunch conversation. And today it's a $500 million valuation on a company that came out of the ground. Was that lucky? Was that fast? Was it an overnight success story? Yeah, it was an overnight success story that took 35 years. So that's the thing that is just, everybody's impatient. Everybody sees highlight reels on social media feeds and goes, wow, you have a Lamborghini, Ty, like amazing. That must've happened yesterday. And it's like, all right, well, if that was yours, it took more than yesterday. It wasn't an overnight thing. And unfortunately, we get sucked into wondering why our life doesn't look like that. Well, it's because the last 20 years, we had a different set of rhythms, behaviors, patterns, and commitments than the person that is where we want to be. So it takes that connection to the commitment and then the follow through, that's the hard part. It's actually doing the thing every day and then getting your butt kicked all the time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about passion. You're the first person on this show that actually told the truth about passion. And passion isn't that thing you wake up and you're just like, oh, I love doing this every day. There might be love for what you're doing, but it's really the pursuit that you love. It's the creation that you fall in love with. And in that creation of that thing that we like to call passion in different capacities, that's what solves the problem for people. But they're, like you mentioned, like our past are so similar. You've just done more. You started younger. You did 70 companies. I'm at like 27. And the same thing. A lot of my companies did fail, but I don't call them failures because if those companies didn't fail by today's, terminology, I couldn't have got to the next step and I couldn't have what I've had today. But, when you mention passion, I guess if it is by definition, something you love every day, well, I don't know. I don't love being on planes, like you said, like every single month, multiple times, being away from my family. I don't love getting up at 5 a.m. just so that I can get a workout before my 7 a.m. day starts and my day ends at 7 p.m. And it went by so fast that literally, when people are like, oh gosh, the day was so long, my days are too short. And I'm talking 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I don't love that because that's less time I get to spend doing things that I truly do love doing, like seeing my daughter. But all those things, like you said, are just part of our DNA. Some would say that we're just sick. Okay. To each their own, I suppose, but that's what it takes. Unfortunately, that's what it takes. And there's so much joy in that passion, that pain passion, if you will, because in creation, the greatest gift we all have comes something that I don't know if I have words for what creation is, but it is the essence of everything that we have today. If creation didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. So, and also I want to talk a little bit about some of the things you started mentioning, and that is change. How many times in your life have you heard people say, "Oh, I hate change," but without change, we don't get better. We don't evolve. Actually, nothing happens without change. So can we just talk a little bit about change? But I want to frame it to your story. In 2008, when the Great Recession hit, you lost $20 million. You lost $20 million and you went negative. You were literally, I think, if I'm not mistaken, $5 million in debt. Folks, think about that. Okay, it's one thing to lose 20 million. That means you had to have 20 million to start. So you're like, oh, he lost what he made in his businesses. No. But he went in the hole $5 million. And it pretty much happened overnight when the Great Recession hit. So that's radical change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it really helped me understand that we can never really overestimate how wrong we can be. I thought I had all these projects that I was working on, and I had this $20 million life. I thought I was pretty important and pretty rich and multimillionaire, and all these projects in 12 months. Those 7 projects that I had all over the country went from thinking they were going to make me $1 million each to losing me more than $1 million each, and then all the net worth went away. And not only was I in the hole, but I was literally sleeping out of my car. So going from Ferrari to, having that as a fun toy, literally to being in a place where I'm homeless, that experience was a huge gift. At the time, it was like, oh my gosh, everything's going away. My life looked and sounded like a country song. Probably should have been writing country songs because, lost the house, lost the money, lost the girlfriend, lost the dog. It was pretty brutal. Just didn't play the guitar. And when I look back, I go, okay, what was that for? And after a couple of years of sucking my thumb, hanging out in the corner, hiding, I really started asking some different questions about what that was. And it took time. It took a couple of years of working with somebody, and we asked one question: what is true? And so I dug deep into that because what I realized was that I was focusing on making more money for the purpose of more money, and it was never going to be enough. And I see most people, literally most people, not like some or half, but most people chasing, and they're chasing an unlimited, never-ending target that's going to keep moving on them. And that's what I was doing. So what became true is it wasn't about the money. The money needed to be a side effect. And the process I needed to go through was a process of transformation. And I learned this through, there's a process called perturbation. It's Prigoghine's theory of dissipative structure. And basically what this is, if you take a caterpillar or a human and you put a lot of pressure on that thing, eventually it breaks down and then pops out as a butterfly or a different human being. Happens with coal, goes into diamonds. And what happens when people are saying, okay, there's either an event or we go into a process of transformation or reinvention, if you can stay in that process long enough, you'll break down and pop out at a higher energy level and be a different person, and you can't go back. You can't take a butterfly and move the butterfly back into a caterpillar. Just like the work that you and I have done over the years, once you put enough pressure and energy into something, us humans, it will change you. And you and I can't go back to how we were in 2000. Like, that's not going to happen. Most people don't want to, they take a little energy, they start to learn, it's uncomfortable, and then they back off. They undo the energy, and then they stay, and their life 20 years from now is the same life they're having today. And they wonder why that is. It's because we're not willing to endure the grind, the pain, getting on the planes, doing the work that we don't want to do. We'd rather do other things. You made a great comment about wanting to spend time with family, with kids. And I think a lot of people revert back to the thing that feels good instead of the thing that's going to deeply fulfill them. That's the big shift that I made. It was, okay, instead of just feeling good with more money and more hedonistic tendencies, what am I here for? And what I'm here for is to impact other people. And the side effect is 10x or 100x more money. And really, it's waking up going, my life has purpose. It matters every day. And like, I don't want to get on a plane and go to 4 different cities in 7 different days like I did last week, but I did it because that's part of this mission. It's because I know who I am and what I'm doing.
Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action like so many others have by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up. I mean, I often think about this, just in normal business and just my normal day, I am away from my family a lot. I was just on a business trip in New Zealand for 10 days, and I haven't felt homesickness like that ever in my life. And it was primarily because I have a 3.5-year-old that I just love being with, and she loves being with me. And, like watching her send me, or on FaceTimes with her crying because she misses me. But you know what? Some people would be like, that's not worth it. You should be spending time with your family. You should just give up. You shouldn't be traveling. Like, give all that up and spend time with your daughter, because that's what really matters. To a certain extent, I would agree with that. But also, there's going to come a time where I'm going to have to sit down with my daughter, look her in the eye, and she's going to ask me, Daddy, or she's going to say something like, Daddy, look at all this that we have. Look at all the people's lives that we changed. And I'm going to say to her, yeah, do you remember all those long days when I wasn't home? All those times when I was on a plane talking to you through a phone? That's what it took to change that many people's lives. And that's the purpose, folks. Like, without purpose, you have nothing. And that's why sometimes I just cannot be in a room with people that are just seeking security. They just want, and they make the excuses like, oh, I wouldn't do what you do. I want to be home with my family. To each their own. But like, literally, what are you giving up for that security? Because the risk taker, as Earl would say, is always the one that wins. And the risk taker is the one that takes the least amount of risk. And I love that you talked about like pressure on people and coal and caterpillars, because that pressure is what makes us change, forces us to change, and we become better for that change. And I think an interesting dynamic to that change is what's happening right now in the world. I know a lot of people that are listening to this, they do the same thing you and I do. They watch social media, Instagram, TikTok, and you see all these successful rich people with the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris and all this. But I'll paint a sad picture of the future, and I will nail it. Many of those people that you're seeing will lose everything in the coming years, because we are about to undergo some of the most drastic change that most people in their lifetime have ever seen. It's cyclical, folks. You can't get around it. Yes, the Fed does a good job of pushing it, but you can't get around it, and it's going to happen. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to go through that change, that metamorphosis, if you will, because there's going to be massive pressure, and they're going to lose things that they value so much because they paid so much money for them. But they're going to realize that in life, the thing that really matters is the things that we get for free. And the things that we spend money on are literally worthless in the grand scheme of things. But it takes that pressure to change us into that thought. And I want to talk a little bit about one of your companies, the one that, that you were just alluding to. In this country, there's a major problem, and that problem is called retirement. And I'm not talking about the problems with Social Security or the problems with pensions. I'm talking about retirement plans, your 401ks, and even your self-directed solo case. Some of the problems that are faced by most Americans when it comes to the retirement is just the lack of knowledge, the lack of application, and literally the lack of control of their money. They literally just blindly put money into something that they don't know, like, or understand, and they just think it's all going to be okay until it's not. This is a huge problem, folks. This is a probably $100 trillion problem in the grand scheme of things. I don't know the exact number of money, like dollars in retirement accounts, but I remember hearing 40 trillion, but that was a long time ago. So this is a $40 trillion problem. And this is the problem you solve. So let's talk about EQRP. And just so it actually, if you could just explain what QRP means to the audience, because some people might not know what that means. And then let's get into what you've created and why it solves the $40+ trillion problem.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's literally a $40 trillion space. And that what we're talking about is qualified retirement plans. We're talking about which is a tax shelter, 401ks and IRAs. This is where people by default put money. They're told by Wall Street, they're told by financial advisors or their employer, this is what you do, and you get your money matched. And then people sort of just check out. And it's almost like this, it's like monopoly money. It's sort of like out there. And then someday I hope it'll be big enough and I can pull out 4 or 5% of it every year and live on, and I won't die. I'll outlive, I won't outlive my money. And so what I looked at, so this is about 10 years ago when I was in this process of reinventing and thinking about what's the impact going to be. I watched my dad get towards the end of his life, and I watched him, both he and my mom, worked in military and the school system, and they played by the rules. So, they're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to put money into my retirement account. And a few weeks before my dad died, he sat down, we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, there were so many things that I wanted to do, and I'm out of time. And it was this incredible regret, and it broke me. It was like a searing tattoo on my soul. And one of the things that I learned, like, people are either they teach us stuff as examples or warnings. And one of the warnings there that we can really get a lot from was that if you don't engage in your money, you're going to feel like you don't have enough, and you're not going to do the things, and you're going to get to the end with regret. And that's just a reality of money is a fuel, and it allows us to do a lot of things. So I saw that and I said, okay, so I bet that's the same for a lot of people, that they don't really have a plan. They're not engaging. They're just hoping. So they're smoking a bunch of hopium. This is their strategy. And that's where most people land. They put money into these retirement accounts, and then they just hope it'll all be big enough when they're 60 or 65 years old. And so I started digging into the tax code and really understanding the space. And I realized that there were options for people to control, not just like a self-directed IRA, but really have control where they were absolutely running their ship. They were captaining it. And so I said, I got to do something with this. And that's where the EQRP, the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan system that I built was established. And it was set up to give people a chance, because it put them in control, so that they could say, okay, here's my vision for my life. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's what I want it to look like. And I can determine it. I'm not just handing all my money over to a system, meaning like Wall Street, and then maybe it'll be there after I'm feed to death. We gave people a chance to participate and actively engage. And that's what this is all about. It's about a system of not only control, because a lot of things give you some control. It was about building a community of people around this, thousands of people in the community, and a team. So when people have control, it actually scares the crap out of most people. They're like, I don't know what to do. So we've got this incredible team that's part of that process to coach and guide and answer not only questions, but ask questions of people, because people don't know what they don't know. So they don't even know what to ask. And if you can have people, we have a thing called a MAP, a Millionaire Action Plan, that I created, and it takes people through a process. And really, it's just asking a lot of questions, because I think people, I think Tony said this, or his show, I Am Not Your Guru. Tony Robbins is right. He's not your guru. You're your guru. It's just a question of, do you have the right questions being asked of you? And so the EQRP system is as much asking questions and pulling that stuff out of you as it is giving you access to your money, and then giving you hope that there's actually a different option. And it's not just giving your money to Wall Street and hoping that you'll end up having money at the end of your working life.
So I have a lot to say on this. My audience for the most part knows, I was a financial advisor from 2003 to 2018, when I finally punched out of what I sometimes call hell. It was the closest thing I know to is, maybe the first level of hell. And that is Wall Street. So I did that for a long period of time and set up a lot of qualified retirement plans, a lot of IRAs, 401ks, you name it, we did it. And I will tell you this, for the thousands of clients that I set up into those accounts, maybe 1% of them actually knew what they were putting their money into. That means 99% of the people that I set up retirement plans for had no clue what they were putting their money in. Most of them didn't even know whether they were in conservative, moderate, or high risk. They literally had no clue, no understanding, and they more or less just hoped and prayed. We would do a profile on them, a suitability profile. We'd figure out, okay, well, here's what it says. And we would just say, what do you want to invest in? Here's your menu of investments. And they would say, I don't know. Can you build a portfolio? Our system would build a portfolio for them and just say, all right, here you go. And they had no clue whatsoever. And then all we could do is just say, well, if in 20 years, if it rule of 72, if it doubles every 10 years, you have this much. Oh, great. I can retire on that. Not factoring in inflation, not factoring in life circumstances, not factoring in great recessions and drawdown effects, just hope and pray. But then after I got out of the financial world and I started doing what I do today, which is teaching people how to take back control of their money, I started talking a lot about self-directed IRAs. And I work with custodians that do self-directed IRAs. But hence, then all of a sudden I uncovered another problem, very similar to the first problem. Although self-directed IRAs give people the ability to be in control of where their money goes. If they like this real estate deal and they want to lend on this real estate deal, they can, because they know, like, and understand real estate or whatever they're investing their money in or lending their money on. They can do that. However, they don't know how to. They don't know how to. And the custodians, most of them, don't really do much. They just hold your money. Okay, that's why it's so cheap to have a self-directed IRA custodian manage. They don't manage money, but hold the assets. Is they don't really do much. It's kind of just a holding tank. And that's the problem that I've uncovered. And I haven't figured out how to solve this, because you have. You created the system to help people, to guide people into where they can be in control of their money, but where their money goes based on their needs and things that they know, like, and understand. And to be quite honest, I have not heard of anybody doing this up to this point. That is why most custodians, have billions of dollars sitting in cash, because the clients just don't know what to do with it. They know they wanted control, but once they got the control, they're like, I've never been taught what to do now that I've got this control, and this scares me. So can you elaborate a little bit on just what I mentioned there?
Yeah, I think you nailed something. Like, as an example, Equity Trust is probably the biggest IRA custodian that I'm aware of. They keep gobbling up other companies, and they have, I think the last number I saw was like $43 billion in assets. Tons of that money is sitting in cash. Like you just said, when there are banks that say, please have an IRA here, they know that you're going to just basically have it sitting in cash. They're going to be getting 5% from the Fed, and your money's going to be sitting dead. You're not going to make anything. Like, you nailed it. The system is set up to feed on you until you say, okay, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to figure it out. Until you do that, and they don't encourage you to do that. The cute little Instagram things that they say, learn about your money. They're not really wanting you to take control of your money. In fact, if you try wiring money out of most banks, they give you a really hard time. They're pushing back, and some of it's anti-fraud, but they don't want your money to go away, because that's how they make money. The system is set up to feed on you. It's like the damn Matrix. Like, we are the energy, and it's just pulling on it. So the difference when you get control, that's literally just the first step. It's very easy to set up a company and sell individual 401ks or IRAs, and a lot of places do that. But the big shift that we're talking about is when you go into a space where you literally have the people around you to help guide you through, like, what's the next thing. I mean, it's funny because people are like, yay, I got control. But then they go, now what? And they're freaking scared. I used to say, this is funny, Chris, because your background, I didn't know that you were a financial advisor. I used to say financial advisors are all terrible, and they just rip you off, and they just want to go golfing. And
most of them are exactly that.
Okay, well, so probably a fair characterization of a lot of those folks. What I also realized is that there's a value in having people. And so for most individuals that have an advisor, that's probably a good thing, because they're not willing to take the time and make the effort to go do the thing, like to do the work. And so most people do need some help, because if left to their own devices, they would probably just end up with a pile of cash that wasn't making anything, getting crucified by inflation. And so I've modified my thinking a little bit, and that is, hey, having control of your money doesn't mean that you just take it and it's the Wild West and you throw it around and you shoot things. It's literally, there's an engagement, and you really do. The team is so important. Like, the work that you do there involves teams. Like, involves other people. And this is a collective effort. It's not, this rugged individualism is kind of dangerous if you're like, okay, I'm super smart. Like, unfortunately, I love our doctor members of our community, but they tend to be very dangerous because they're so smart. Oftentimes they're like, well, I can just do this. And I'm like,
doctors, professors, and engineers, the three most dangerous people to themselves.
Right. And it's part of this journey that I've been on was getting myself smashed and humbled. And I think everybody needs to understand that really there's so much out there. It's useful to have a team, have the right people, know who's advising you and who's selling you, because it's like a lot of times people say, well, I've got an advisor. And I'm like, no, they're selling you. They're trying to sell you their product. They're not a neutral advisor. One of the rules I have, if somebody pays me to coach or mentor them, they don't get to participate in anything I'm doing because it has to be totally neutral. And that's a rule. And this wasn't always my rule. It was, oh, you know what? Somebody is a student. Well, this is why, like, you can't go to your psychiatrist or your doctor and then end up having a relationship with them because there's a conflict, there's a power struggle. And that's the same thing with advisors. So that we need to have team members. We need to have people that are advising us and coaching us. And so, like in the EQRP system, there you get mentored and coached. The people that are helping you, guiding you, they're helping you figure out what to do. They're not saying, "Hey, I'm just going to tell you this is the thing that you should do and sell you." And that's a very big difference, because then you're not having to second guess. Like, are you just trying to get my money out of me? Like, we're just trying to help you figure out what's right for you, because we don't know. You're different than every other person, so it's very unique. And I just can't emphasize enough that it's about having the people. And if your system is just it's a thing where you get a binder or an app, and there's a lot of companies doing that for your retirement money, you really aren't being set up for success. You need to have, and I say need, I don't say need very often. I don't say should, because I think should is like shooting all over yourself. But you need to have a great team. A world-class team will help you get where you're trying to go. By yourself, you're almost, it's like 99% likely you're going to get smashed, because you just don't know what you don't know. That's a huge deal.
That is a huge deal. And, you know, the community that we built, the technology platform, Private Money Club, it's basically just a dating site for money. People with money meet people that need money in real estate, and it brings them together just like Tinder or any other dating site. So we created this, and there's over 6,000 people in there. Lots of them have self-directed IRAs, because obviously that's the only way they can lend money to borrowers on the site. But you know, there's a massive problem inside Private Money Club, and that is I can't give them advice. We're not an RIA yet, and that's a whole nother topic. But you know, we can't give advice, and we can't really tell them do this deal, don't do that. We literally just, it's an open platform. You got to kind of learn your own. We give them some education, but what you're doing is you're creating a system, a pathway for them through a community-based approach to then help them in situations like that. Now, not saying it's in Private Money Club, but whatever they want to do with their, you know, QRPs or their retirement accounts, you're basically giving them that pathway that doesn't exist for so many folks that have taken that first step to want to be in control. And I commend you for that, and I love that.
Well, I love that you've built that and that you've created that. And so somebody that has your stuff and they say, well, okay, I'm curious. They might come to us and say, all right, I have this, I'm looking at this thing. And then we would just ask questions. Okay, here's what you want to know about those deals. So they get an outside party to help them move through your system, and it gives them some confidence. So I always say that when I'm helping somebody or mentoring them, what they're getting from me is they're borrowing my confidence because of my experience that I've gone through. And it's the same with the team. We're lending the confidence, because when you're first doing something, you don't know. It's like you get on a bike and somebody says, you can do this. You're like, okay. And then you fall and you're like, wait, but then you get up and you do it again. You're borrowing their confidence when you haven't had the experience yet. And that's what this is about. It's about leveraging other people's confidence, because I have certainty around what's true because of my actual life experience, not because of a book. And when people can trust me or they trust the team, then they can take action, massive action, very quickly, versus saying, well, I'm going to tiptoe through this thing. It's like tiptoeing safely to death's door. That's what most people do. And then there's this great accelerator, which is called leveraging other people's experience. And that moves the needle and gets people to a place that they thought that would have taken 20 years, and they do it in 2 or 3.
Wow. How many of you are liking this discussion? And what you all don't know is the two of us did not know each other, did not know anything about each other until this podcast. And I just want all of you to take note of like the similar pathways. Like he's solving problems on one end, and then I'm solving problems on the other end. We're both out there solving problems on our passion projects. But you see how they just came together right there? How EQRP and Private Money Club literally both need one another. But like that's just how it works. And folks, I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes you just have to believe that that's just what the universe does. It just makes things happen, and you just can't force them. So I just had to bring that up, because I know some of you are thinking, oh, these guys know each other. They must be doing stuff together. Not at all. Literally know nothing about them until this podcast. And that's what's so unique about this. But I also want to go into another problem you're solving that is very in line with everything we've just been talking about, because we've been talking about real estate. Folks, if you look around, like there's a massive need for housing right now. And there's problems in the housing space. And I see it all over the internet. New homes are being thrown up left, right, and center. Builders are trying to build them as fast as possible because of the demand, but they're quality in their craftsmanship has kind of gone downhill because they're trying to build houses faster. And when you try to condense a process that just really can't be condensed, you cut corners. I just saw the other day, somebody bought a brand new house and then their crawl space flooded. And it was simply because the home builder didn't connect the main drain to their shower. I mean, like, this is happening all over the place. Now, that isn't what this next company does, called Frame Tech, but this company solves a massive problem in allowing more housing, whether it's single families, duplexes, or multifamily rentals, to be built faster without cutting corners. So can we talk a little bit about how did Frame Tech come to be? And I think I said that right. Yeah,
Frame Tech. Yeah. Yeah, FrameTech was an idea that our partner had in his mind. That he's been in the manufacturing of trusses, that business, for 50 years, literally since before we were born. This guy has been doing this, and for the last 15 or 20 years, he's had this idea that there's a better way to build and manufacture. And what's interesting is construction has about as much innovation as education. About every 50 years, something happens. So like in construction, the last thing that was really, really substantial was the nail gun, and however many decades ago that was. So he said, I have this idea. And so this is where it's very lucky, but it was opportunity met preparation. Like literally, this guy showed up through a mutual acquaintance, and we saw his idea. We dug into it and we said, we got to be missing something. This doesn't seem real. And the reason it didn't seem real is because the problem was so big and it was so hard to solve that there was a huge opportunity to create massive value. And so we said, okay, we dug in and we said, we like it. Let's do it. So over lunch, we committed to $40 million for the first chunk, the first plant. And we said, we want to build this with you. And they said, you're full of crap. And then we started writing checks and they said, wow, you guys are really doing this. And so now we have a plant that's about to come online. And what Frame Tech and this plants are doing is they're building all the bones for houses. And when I say bones, I'm talking about walls, the floor trusses, the roof trusses, all the wood in a house, a duplex, an apartment, even a hotel. And what we're doing is we're doing all that building inside of a manufacturing plant, and then we're vertically integrated. And that's a fancy word for meaning we take care of all the framing. So somebody comes to us, a builder says, okay, I've got 10 houses or 50 houses, and here's the plans. So they give us the plans, and we say, okay, and we build all this stuff in this very automated process. And by the way, our plants have a couple hundred employees, so it's not just pure robots. And then we build this stuff, and then we take it on site and we put it together. The whole process from the time we get plans to the time somebody has a framed house is 2 weeks. Normally that's 2 to 3 months. So we're shaving off 80% of the time. So it's faster and we have a higher quality product because it's inside of a contained environment. We don't have storms. We don't have all this other junk that you're dealing with. We don't have people stealing a wall every house, which is what happens on site. So we have a better quality product. It's faster and we're more efficient. And guess what? One of the coolest things, like there's every stakeholder wins, including the environment, because our technology that's patented, we have almost no waste. When wood comes in, if you ever look at a house or an apartment that's being built, you see dumpster after dumpster that's full of trees that are just going to be thrown away. We have virtually none. We go from maybe 15 to 20% down to like 1% because we use a finger jointer system. And basically what that means is we cut down a lot less trees to build the same house. So all that happens. And when you create something that big, you create incredible value. So the side effect has been $500 million in value that was created out of literally a napkin idea. And that happened in 2 years. So that's the problem that we're solving. And you can kind of hear that everybody's winning. There's employees, all these jobs are created. So like we're literally building back America. Like it's not just a term, it's an actual thing here in Arizona. And we're doing right by the environment. We're solving a problem. People don't want to go swing hammers in 120-degree weather in Arizona. Nobody wants to do it. People want to go be influencers and they want to do things in front of screens. So we're solving this problem, this lack of labor that's available. And so it's a very cool thing. Our second plant is in process of being built in south of Arizona. And then we have plans to roll these out across the country. So this goes back to the mission. The passion is solving this huge problem, and people get up and we've got people's hair on fire. Like everybody's working their butts off, and it might look like they're stressed, but there's such enthusiasm for doing something that deeply matters to communities and to the environment and to everybody that's what I hope for everybody, that you get to be a part of something, because it's not really about the money. The money takes care of itself if you do something that's impactful, that matters, if you actually find the purpose and the significance. And that's what Frame Tech is.
Wow, that is awesome. I was in listening to you, like I didn't know that about the cut back on the waste. I'm saying that wrong, but not only that, the economies of scale, because you're doing so much of it with so little waste. I saw in your write up that it was about a 20% reduction in cost to build a house this way. So you're solving a problem because nobody wants to work out in the heat. I mean, it seems like nobody wants to work anyway, but you're solving that problem. You're allowing them to cut the time down. So you're doing one of the most valuable things in buying time back for the builders and also the end buyers of these homes. But you're also cutting costs by roughly 20% because of the economies of scale. I mean, so that's a triple win right there. So you got that, you've got EQRP. I mean, anything else we should know about?
Here's a secret too. If you're going to create wealth, you've got to focus. And when people talk about diversifying, and this is that thing in financial advising, you got to diversify your portfolio. Maintaining and protecting a portfolio, it often makes sense to diversify, but when you're building something, you definitely specialize. And so EQRP is run. It took 7 years to get to a place where it's on its own, it's running, it's got a CEO. And so my focus is building frame tech, and that's the next step in impact. So is there other stuff? Do I do other things? Sure. I've got FU, my Financial Underdogs podcast. I write books. There's stuff, but the reality is my focus is on frame tech. I moved back to Arizona to be a half an hour from the plant. Like I'm making the conscious decision to be narrowly focused, and that's one of those tricks to creating wealth. Get very focused and stay protective of that thing. Go deep into it. When I see people investing and they're like, well, I'm going to invest $17 in this and $100 in that and whatever that number is, they're all over the place. They don't really know really a whole lot about anything. And I always suggest go deep into something and then go into something else instead of just spreading all over. It's kind of like handing your money to somebody and saying, invest in 100 different stocks. And I have no idea what's going on. So I'm purposefully saying no. That is, you've probably heard this before, but the difference between successful and super successful people, the super successful people say no to almost everything. And that's where I'm at. It's saying no to almost everything and being really conscious about what I'm saying yes to. When you say no, you open space to be able to say yes to the things that really matter. So I'm saying no to everything so that I can say yes to the impact that frame tech is going to have on the world.
I love that. And you mentioned another thing there about being a specialist and being focused on, first it was EQRP, now it's frame tech. And I can say a lot about that. You ever see the Family Guy episode where he's going around, he's like, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy. Like, especially in the real estate world, that's most real estate investors. They get into it, they become an entrepreneur, and then they're just like, oh, I'm going to be a wholesaler. Oh, I'm going to flip houses. Oh, I'm going to buy rentals. Oh, I'm going to do sub two. Oh, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden they're doing nothing. Because you can't do all those things. You are a complete generalist. And in the financial advisor world, most financial advisors are generalists. They are not specialized. And I will tell you, my success came when I finally learned that I am going to be the surgeon in my industry. Because if you look at a heart surgeon, what do? They operate on hearts. And even some heart surgeons operate on just a specific type or specific part of your heart. And they are the best in the world at that one little thing. And how much money do they make? Boatloads of it, because they are the best at one specialized thing. And when I started doing that, when I started just doing one thing and teaching people how to be the bank and take back control of their money, that's when I started making the most amount of money. And then that, like you, got off on its own. I have directors, I have everybody helping run that. And then we just, by mistake, created Private Money Club to solve a problem that all of our Be Your Own Bank clients had. They needed a place for their money to go. So Private Money Club was created on a napkin just because we needed to solve a problem. And now that's the focus. So it's much like your story, just different things. But folks, the biggest thing you should take out of this is become the surgeon, become the specialist, find the one thing you're good at and that you like, and go deep into it and ignore everything else. Become the best at saying no to everything else and say yes to everything that benefits your one cause. And that's how you'll become, you said super successful. That's how you become a multi-billionaire, by doing just that. So as we kind of come to the end of this, I mean, we've given them so much stuff, but how do they learn more about you? How do they watch your podcast, get your books, or just learn how to get involved in EQRP?
I think that, one of the great things when you create something unique like EQRP or FrameTech, it's pretty easy to find. You just go to that, literally Google EQRP and you go right to EQRP.com or FrameTech. It's very easy to find. So whatever you're kind of curious about, I think the direct answer is go visit and connect. And then, if you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn is the place to find me. But really, it's right now, anything that got you curious, go deep into it. Just like, poke into it and see if there's something that resonates. If you want not only control of your retirement money, you want to actually have a team that's supporting you and helping you make great decisions. That's what EQRP is all about. And if you want to see what's disrupting the construction industry, I think it's very cool to see FrameTech. And whether you say, I think one of the things that I tell people that is really important for everybody listening or watching is FrameTech is a great model to say, okay, this is what my investments should look like, whether you invest in FrameTech or not. Looking at that and saying, okay, this is what a world-class investment opportunity looks like. It's got the team, it's got the experience, it's got the asymmetric upside, it's got all these things. And so when you're judging everything, I would use FrameTech as a comparison. It's like the bar for what an investment should look like is FrameTech. And that's really helpful for a lot of people because they go, I don't know whether a deal is good or not. I'm like, well, here's a world-class deal that I'm all in on, and people have put over $100 billion in between these plants. Why are they doing that? Because of everything, all the pieces. One of my books I wrote is called Unicornomics, and it's the first 15% that gives you the 85% likelihood of success. And it's all the experience of here are the things that need to be in place. So FrameTech was really using those principles, like first order principles, and thinking, what are those things that need to be there? Like whether you start a business or invest in a business, if you have certain things, you have a very high likelihood of success. You don't even know what you don't know. So most people just say, well, it looks good, or it's a shiny, I call it, a bunch of people are basically drunk squirrels chasing shiny nuts. There's a lot of shiny nuts out there, or pieces of candy, like you said with Family Guy. That's what we need to avoid. We need to say, okay, what are the things that need to be in place? And that's my decision. It's very thoughtful. It's very methodical. And when you start with that, that's what FrameTech is. That's what EQRP is built on. That's what I represent is empowering people with the right thinking. So if you can get your thinking in order, you're going to have a high likelihood of success. If your thinking is not right, it doesn't matter how many things look good or taste good, you're probably going to end up throwing up.
I love it. I mean, it's just everything you're saying is exactly what everybody listening or watching needs to hear. And it's just like the third law of wealth. I'm not going to go through the 6 laws of wealth, but the third law is protect your wealth. And you protect your wealth by investing in things you know, like, and understand, whether it's FrameTech or EQRP, to get the guidance, be in the community and have somebody guide you to that end result, which is investing in things that you know, like, and understand. You reduce your risk significantly by doing that, but you also become part of the 5%. And then eventually you'll become part of the 2%, and eventually you'll be part of the 1%. And that's just how it works. Through specialization and also through knowledge, you will get there. And folks, what we're going to do is in the description here, we're going to put the websites there so you can check out EQRP. You can check out and learn more about everything that Damian's doing. And please grab his books. The books are available on the website, the link that'll be in the description. So grab the books, check out his podcast, and just get around the campfire. So with that being said, Damian, anything you want to say in final parting words?
I think the one thing I'll leave everybody with is there's no downside to going out and taking action. The 70 companies that we talked about to start with, and all the things that are out there that you can possibly make mistakes on. No mistake is a loss unless you don't learn the lesson. And that's the thing that really, I think, stops a lot of people. They're afraid of the judgment or the feelings. And the reality is all the successes are built on all of the failures. The failure isn't a thing that you are, it's a thing that you did. And it's how you grow. It's how you get to the place that you want to be. So I would encourage everybody, build a team around you and don't be afraid of this stuff. And we'll all cheer you on together as you're stumbling and making progress towards the thing that you really want in your life. And I can't wait to do it with you. And I really appreciate you having me here and the opportunity to reach and touch so many people.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you so much. This has been really insightful. This has been just a great episode. And for all of you listening, make sure you check the websites out. And, I'm just going to leave you with this. Mr. Will Rogers said it best. The biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. The biggest problem in America is what people think they know that just ain't so. With that being said, we'll catch you on the next episode. Have a good day.